guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here. We are finally doing Noccalula Falls. I know y'all been waiting for this video for a minute, and I apologize. I have a husband and kids and all that stuff, and I have to plan trips. But I really appreciate y'all being patient with me because it's a very, very good story. And like I say, I made the trip up there, and it was absolutely beautiful, and it was definitely something I needed for myself. But at the same time, I gained a lot of knowledge in history on the place. So today we're talking about Noccalula Falls and kind of what drove her to do what she did. If you don't know the story, definitely stick around because it's a good one. And if you've never been here before, my name is Brandy. I bring like weird dark history stories back to life by telling the story. I put a little makeup on my face. Most of my stories are about witches or vampires or poison or werewolves. Any kind of strange history stories. I'm down for it. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get this party started.
Here is her plaque. It's a whole bunch of stuff on it. Don't worry, I'm going to and here it is. Look at that. My God, that is beautiful. I'm in fucking awe right now. Look at this. Oh, I want to go down there, but I think they have it closed because it's so cool. Rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. See it?
So, Noccalula Falls is a beautiful 250 acre state park with a 90-foot waterfall. Okay, it is absolutely beautiful. Y'all are going to be seeing a lot of videos and stuff throughout this, but the way they came to get the land is it used to be owned by a mayor who kind of held on to it until he passed, and then it went down to his daughter. And his daughter decided to sell the land to Gadsden at a certain date and for a certain price and all this stuff. I think it was like half the 250. So in 1940, she sold a portion of it to Gadsden for $50,000. And then she sold the rest of it to him in 1959. And that was $70,000. So they only paid like, I'm not 100, like, I don't know, 130,000. Is that math? I can't do math, but only 130,000 for 250 acres of land with this beautiful creek. Black Creek is the name of the creek that the falls actually are. It's called Black Creek, and it winds throughout the entire land. There's rock structures that are actually just super stunning. It's a beautiful place, but it has a very, very horrid past, unfortunately. The word Noccalula in Cherokee actually means thundering falls, thundering water. And so after what happened, the chief, her dad decides to name the falls after what she did. So, but before I tell you guys what she did, I got to tell you what happened building up to this, to what kind of led this to happen. Okay, so we get Thomas Jefferson in the White House in 1832 for his second term, and this is when he starts the Indian Removal Act. Okay, and the state of Georgia decides to take it upon them to claim all the Cherokee land. Yeah, they were like, yeah, your land's my land now, and since you live in the state, you have to abide by these laws. And yet they're stealing, but it is what it is. And so he starts this Indian Removal Act, and so everybody starts going out to the Cherokee lands. They're looking for gold. They're rooting, they're looting, they're stealing, they're doing all these things, these horrible things. And so the Cherokee are being pushed basically to the Trail of Tears. Well, as we know, the Trail of Tears goes through Alabama. I've seen the signs all my life because I grew up here. Trail of Tears. They now call it the Tannehill Trail. I noticed that they changed the signs to the Tannehill Trail. And, I mean, that's one way to erase history. Or maybe they're just trying to make it sound a little bit easier on the ear. Because I've noticed down here in Alabama, we have a lot of pride in Native Americans. I am part Native American. We have a lot of pride in the people because this place is in Etowah County. And the place that I went and visited afterwards, where my parents live, is Cherokee County. And then where I live is Tuscaloosa County. So you have to think that almost every single county in Alabama is named in some kind of Indian way, but it's done in a respectful manner. So, once the Indian Removal Act has begun, okay, they start, like I say, the Cherokee are being pushed out, and they are being pushed to Alabama. Now, Alabama, that's where the Creeks were, okay? Now, I'm not saying that the Indians did not get along, but they did butt heads there at first, okay? Because, two different tribes, different ceremonies, different beliefs maybe, I don't know. But I do know that they were at odds against each other. But it didn't last long. And I think the reason why was because the chief of the Creeks in the Etowah County area, well, I know it wasn't Etowah then, but it is now, decides he comes up with a plan. He says, I will marry my daughter to the son of a Creek, basically. I guess maybe it was the chief of the Creeks, and he had a son, he had a daughter. He was gonna get them married, and then that way they could all be one big happy tribe, maybe fighting back for their land. Now you got to think, this place where the Creeks were living, it was an absolute trading center. I mean, this is a huge body of water. This is a good place for them to be. And so it was not only that, it was ceremonial ground. And so they were going to hold this ancient, ceremony of combining the tribes with Noccalula with the Creek's son. Well, unfortunately, our girl had fallen in love with somebody from her own tribe, a Cherokee. And she must have fallen deeply in love with this dude, like super in love, because what she ends up doing on her wedding day, when she's supposed to get married to the Creek, she decides if she can't marry her Cherokee that she wants, then she's going to jump from the 90-foot waterfall into the rocky basin below. Now, it is very, very deep where the waterfall falls, but where she jumped, it's not deep. And so immediately she was dead, and that's basically the story of Noccalula Falls, and they have a statue of her up there. Now, the cool thing about this is the ladies of Gadsden, a long time ago, actually put together a fundraiser so they could make this statue of Noccalula and have it there at the falls. And these kids would go around and collect pennies and things like that to help out with it. And so, like, everybody in the town helped to make this monument to Noccalula. Now, it does talk about there, which I was kind of shocked about, but then again, I have to remember I'm in Alabama, and we don't have any beef with Indians down here, so just saying. So if you think about it, her death could have combined the tribes. This is just what I'm thinking. Her death could have combined the tribes, and they may have had a fighting chance without having to go onto the Trail of Tears. You know what I mean? But then again, I understand where she's coming from, because she was probably used to seeing everybody marry for love their entire life, and now all of a sudden she's being forced to marry. This wasn't a normal Native tradition. I felt like this was something they were doing to create unity, and maybe she was too young to understand that, and that's why she decided to do what she did. But if we didn't have this Indian Removal Act and these people going and taking over the Cherokee lands and pushing them to Alabama, none of these things would have happened to begin with. But it is history, and we're here to learn from it. Am I right? I mean, I'm just saying. So I did find out some other facts about this place. In 1859, a man named Gadsden, we're not really sure what his first name is, came and surveyed the land, and he carved his initials behind the waterfall. Unfortunately, I could not get down to the waterfall because it had just rained up there and the falls were going pretty hard, and so for me to go down there was going to be really dangerous. And plus I was getting sick and I didn't even realize it until I was coming home. And so, but anyway, the falls, like I say, there's this beautiful bridge that goes across Black Creek right before the falls go over. Okay,
It's a really pretty bridge that goes over it. It goes over the falls. Oh, what's with the locks? I need to know. This is history. I need to know. There's.
and on this bridge I found all these locks, like safety padlocks, master locks, the ones we used to use on our lockers at school when we had lockers. You'll probably know what I'm talking about, but you know what I mean. And I was wondering what that was. Well, so I got to asking, and they said those are lovers' locks. Basically, some people go up there and they get married at Noccalula, and they are allowed to put a lock on the bridge with their initials and like the day they got married and the date and all that fun stuff. And so there's all these locks along this beautiful bridge that goes like this. I thought that was super rad that they did that. Now, something devastating happened at this place too before it became a national park. When it was first bought by Gadsden, they tried to go up underneath the waterfall where there's a cavern, and they tried to blow it out some more, like with dynamite, to make it into like this little lounge area. They're gonna kind of do how like they did DeSoto Falls, the DeSoto Caverns video that I covered. That's basically what they were gonna do. So they're like blasting and using dynamite and like all this crazy stuff. And when you have rushing water like that, you gotta think for a minute. What in the world? That's a lot of power above your head. So if they didn't think that like a really, really bad thing's gonna happen, they're just not thinking. Sorry, my dog is getting up. It is what it is. It is what it is. But a cave-in ensued while they were using their dynamite to try to create an underground little area so that they could party, basically. Okay. And a lot of people lost their lives in this. Yes, they did. So to say that this place is haunted, it's not only haunted by Noccalula, it's haunted by the people that got trapped down there underneath the caverns. Okay, when the thing blew, you can't. Common sense just tells you've got running water above you and you're blasting. That's just not gonna work, dude. It's not a smart idea. And so all these people ended up passing away, which is very, very sad. Very sad. There's a lot of sad stories in this, except for the locks. But the thing that gets me is why they would want to turn it into something like that when it's so beautiful. I would set it up as a national park. That's just but they eventually did. Obviously, they eventually did. It became listed on the Register of Landmarks and Heritage on May 12th in 1976. So Gadsden had a hold of the land for a while, and I guess they were trying to figure out some things to do with it. And one thing they did with it was they got a covered bridge. Okay. Now, this covered bridge is called the Gillen Reese Covered Bridge, and it's actually from a plantation. It was going to be destroyed, but then it was donated to Gadsden, and they were like, okay, we're going to put it over here in Noccalula Falls Park. And so that's exactly what they did. Now, they say it's non-authentic now because they had to replace some of the lattice that made up the bridge. with different stuff so it would hold structurally. So because it's not exactly built how it was when it was first built, it's not technically authentic, but it is an authentic covered bridge. It's just had stuff done to it, like it's had a makeover basically, you know what I'm saying? So this covered bridge was actually made in 1889, and like I say, it was on a plantation that was getting torn down because they were building the interstate right through it. And so they really needed a place to put it. They were just going to throw it away. But then, like I said, Gadsden was like, hey, we could use that. So they put it over a part of the creek. It's not Black Creek, it's Willis Creek. The two do converge. And they put it there to improve transportation through that area, okay, so that people could get over the creek without any issues, without getting hurt or anything like that, which in my opinion, that's a good idea. Good on you, good on you. And so they had this beautiful covered bridge there now that you can walk on and all this fun stuff. And like I say, if I hadn't started feeling bad, I would have done all these things, but I started to feel bad. So ended up dipping and going to my mom's, but that's okay. I got lots of footage to be showing y'all through this. But like I say, it was moved to the park in 1976 to avoid being destroyed by, like I say, Highway 59, because it was on a plantation for a really, really, really long time, and they moved it, and it helped improve the transportation in the area. So that's always a good thing. So in 1889, this bridge goes over Willis Creek to help improve transportation. Then in 1920, Riceville Road was constructed, and that was also donated to Gadsden. And so, like I say, then it was moved to the park, and they reconstructed it a bit because they had to, I mean, what else can you do? The thing was falling apart. It was part of a plantation that was very, very much so weathered. Down here in the South, it's very humid. The air is always wet. So things rust, things peel very, very much so faster down here than they do anywhere else. Now, they have lots of things there at Noccalula Falls to do for kids. They have playgrounds, they have a petting zoo, they got like some kind of like colonial village, which I still just steered kind of clear from that. And, and things like that for the kids. And they also have a botanical garden with over 25,000 different azaleas. And if you're from Alabama, you know how much we love our azaleas. We love our azaleas. When they bloom, we are excited, point blank, period. I'm just saying. So basically, all this happens because this whole entire deal with Andrew Jackson. If he hadn't tried to start moving them down this trail of tears, ugh, so sad. Then the Cherokee and the Creeks would have never had to meet up. They would have never had to make a deal or anything. They could have just done their own thing, traded with each other. Everything would have been happy, But that's not the way our history of America is. It was not built on happiness and love. It was built on genocide and theft. So, but that's just my thing. I mean, even the people in Georgia, like I said, they just took it upon themselves to start taking from the Cherokees. They just looted their stuff, went and started panning all these creeks for gold and all this other kind of stuff. And, with that Indian Removal Act, moving the Cherokees into the Alabama territory, it created tension between the tribes, obviously. I mean, that's going to happen. Check out these rock formations. Look how beautiful these are on the ground. It's just stunning here. I just love it, dude. By the way, I think I've been saying Thomas Jefferson this whole entire video, and I really meant Andrew Jackson. That is so freaking embarrassing. Okay? I'm gonna have to go back and watch, but just know I'm talking about Andrew Jackson getting reelected in 1832. Okay? I don't know what I'm thinking this morning. It's been nuts, okay? It's just been nuts. I apologize for that. To make peace with the Creeks, they were like, hey, we gotta, you're gonna have to marry your daughter to my son, and maybe that will make everybody happy. We'll all be one big happy family. But Noccalula was not down for that, not at all. She was not down. She was like, no, I am in love with the Cherokee man. And she stood by that, And I props to her, but you didn't have to jump off a waterfall. But also, she probably wasn't used to the fact of being married off, because in my opinion, I do not think that was the way that they did things like that back then. No, not at all. So just because she loved a Cherokee man, she couldn't bear the thought of marrying somebody that she didn't love. So on the day of her marriage, she decides to jump off the waterfall, thus upsetting her father very much, obviously, because he lost his daughter. And everything just goes sideways after that, as we know, because the Creeks and the Cherokees all get pushed to the Trail of Tears, and they are forced to move north. And it's a very, very sad tale that it started here, and to see people, native people here, that would have had to move to the north. Me as a southerner, I'm so used to living in the south, it would be hard for me to go to, say, Michigan, because being cold all the time is not something that I'm used to. My body's not used to it. My immune system's not used to it. So you have to think that when they're walking and they barely have no food, they're having to make these teepees in order to have shelter, because teepees were not always what natives used. No, they actually had towns. They had structures. They had things that were taken over. This is the parts that we miss in history that are so important. And I need to read to you guys something that Andrew Jackson said when he did this Indian removal treaty, because he tried to say that they had a choice. Let me read it to you. This is what Andrew Jackson says once he's elected president and starts to remove all the indigenous farmers and create destruction in all the towns in the South. Okay? So his first annual message to Congress, he wrote, "The immigration should be voluntary, for it would be as cruel as unjust to compel the Aboriginals to abandon the graves of their fathers and seek a home in a distant land. But they should be distinctly informed that if they remain within the limits of the states, they must be subjected to their laws. In return for their obedience, as individuals, they will without a doubt be protected in the enjoyment of those possessions which have improved by their industry." Basically saying, if you don't follow our laws and do our things like, go to church every Sunday and, all those other things, like as long as you abide by the state laws, but you got to think those states were taken. Those weren't states before anybody came over here. You just got to think of it like that. Anyway, today was a very, very sad story, I hate to say. Poor Noccalula, her dad's trying to do the right thing for the whole tribe, and she kind of thought about herself. I mean, it is what it is, though. That's the story of Noccalula Falls and all their fun stuff that they have. If you're ever in Gadsden, Alabama, go by there in Etowah County. You can see the falls for free to get into the park. I think it's like $10, and it's you can see all the things. Like they have a petting zoo, and like I say, like a little colonial village or something, and botanical gardens and all that other kind of stuff like that. So it's a really, really beautiful place. It's stunning. As y'all seen throughout this whole video, I've been putting up stuff. But it's absolutely beautiful there, and I'm so glad that I got to go. And I'm glad I got to bring the story to y'all. So, anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And I will be back later on this week with I'm going to say it's a witchy tale this time. It's going to be a witch tale. So, stick around. Much love.